You won't believe what just happened with Barack Obama in a televised program where Karoline Leavitt, the youngest spokesperson in U.S. history, stunned the nation with a fearless and provocative statement aimed directly at the former president. At just 27, Karoline brought not only sharp intellect but unwavering courage, leveling serious allegations that sent shockwaves through the political establishment. She held nothing back, speaking with precision and conviction, each word landing like a blow to the legacy of Barack Obama. The American Pulse studio pulsed with anticipation, lights blazing and the atmosphere tense, as viewers across the country leaned in for what was being billed as an unprecedented showdown. On one side stood Karoline Leavitt, the bold and assertive voice of a new generation conservatives. On the other, Barack Obama, the polished former president long admired for his calm authority. The host stepped forward with a resonant voice that carried the weight of history, welcoming the audience to what he described as more than a debate, but a quest for truth in a fractured nation. Karoline sat poised in her navy suit, her eyes piercing the crowd as the host turned to her with the opening question regarding Obama's influence on media integrity. Without hesitation, she accused the former president of orchestrating coordinated media attacks against political opponents Mitt Romney in 2012 and Donald Trump in 2016, alleging that these were not mere editorial choices, but deliberate smear campaigns crafted behind closed doors. As she spoke, a large screen behind her revealed timelines and headlines, linking into confidential meetings and internal emails. The crowd reacted with a mix of shock, applause, and disbelief as Karoline's voice rang out with unwavering clarity. When Obama responded, his tone was calm yet firm, rejecting the accusations as baseless and asserting his respect for press freedom. But Karoline pressed further, producing documents and emails that implied manipulation, asserting that Obama's coordination with the press was not coincidental but strategic and damaging. The tension escalated as the host acknowledged the gravity of the claims, citing polling data showing Americans' growing mistrust in the media and emphasizing how Karoline's evidence could reshape public perception. The focus then turned to foreign policy, particularly the Iran nuclear deal, which Karoline lambasted as a reckless concession that emboldened Iran and endangered regional stability. Again, she presented visual evidence, citing increased military spending by Iran following the deal, and accused Obama of arming an adversary. Obama countered with a defense grounded in international diplomacy, framing the deal as a necessary step to prevent nuclear proliferation and arguing that the financial settlements were lawful and transparent. Yet Karoline remained resolute, unveiling reports and emails that questioned the legitimacy of the deal and exposed Iran's violations post-agreement. The studio became a pressure cooker of political tension, with social media igniting in real time. Pro-MAGA voices hailed Karoline as a truth-teller, while critics accused her of distorting facts. The media pounced, some labeling her a controversial figure, others a beacon of truth. As the debate surged forward, the host introduced a new front in the war of ideas: healthcare. Karoline turned her attention to Obamacare, denouncing it as an economic burden that betrayed its promises and punished ordinary Americans with higher costs and lost coverage. Charts and statistics back her claims as she portrayed the policy as a legacy designed to polish Obama's image at the expense of everyday citizens. Obama responded with the authority of a seasoned policymaker, defending the Affordable Care Act as a monumental achievement that expanded coverage and reduced the uninsured rate. He acknowledged its imperfections but challenged the framing of it as a failure, reminding the audience of the chaos and inequity that preceded its passage. Karoline stood unwavering, her voice cutting through the studio with the energy of movement behind her, determined to hold power to account. With each exchange, the divide deepened and the stakes rose as millions watched the clash of visions for America's future unfold live on stage, burdened morally, economically, and socially. The audience fell silent, but the studio atmosphere was primed for a counterstrike. As the camera panned to Karoline, her eyes icy as if preparing her next response. Obama supporters in the audience applauded. But Karoline didn't flinch. 20 million ensured she asked her voice like a chilling gust directly, challenging the healthcare milestone claim, then explained why millions lost their preferred plans due to Obamacare's regulations. She pressed a button, and the screen displayed an internal email where an official wrote need to mitigate backlash over individual plan cancellations. This is proof you knew people would lose their insurance. Karoline set her voice like a prosecutor building on Obama's insurance point. You didn't improve healthcare, you. pushed Americans into financial chaos. The studio audience fell silent, feeling the weight of the accusation. The host interjected, his voice brimming with excitement, tying it to reality and prior dialogue. Karoline, you accuse Obamacare causing financial chaos a concern as American families grapple with health care costs. As the Kaiser survey highlights Mr. Obama as a leader who championed health care reform. She claims you knew people lost insurance backed by internal emails. How do you respond? Obama shook his head, his voice firmer, building on Karoline's chaos point. Karoline calling Obamacare chaos is misleading. That email isn't real. This law improved healthcare access, protected those with pre-existing conditions, and is supported by most Americans. I reject the accusation that it caused financial harm. Karoline smiled, her eyes fixed on Obama supported. She asked, her voice like a bolt of light tearing through the studio, challenging the majority support claim. Then explain why. Insurance costs skyrocketed, pushing families into debt. She press a button, and the screen displayed a report. Obamacare impact insurance costs up 25% from 2010 to 2018. This report shows your cost-saving promise was a lie. She said, her voice like a hammer striking in a courtroom, building on Obama's improved health care point. You didn't help Americans. You prioritized your legacy over their needs. A camera zoomed in on the report, the studio audience silent. Feeling the weight of her argument, the audience watched intently, fully engrossed in the escalating clash between Karoline Leavitt and Barack Obama. On stage, the atmosphere settled like still water before a storm. The host, professional in demeanor, his voice resonant with the weight of the event, stepped to the center of the stage, serving as the mediator between two opposing worldviews. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, composed but focused. In an era where trust in politics is under strain, the question of former leaders' roles after leaving office grows increasingly urgent. Many Americans question the behind-the-scenes influence the forces believed to still shape the nation's direction even after leaving power. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the audience, as if inviting them into a broader inquiry. Karoline, he continued, with your firm stance on power, transparency, and post-tenure accountability, I want to ask. Former President Obama pledged to step back from politics after leaving the White House. But given his statements, indirect advocacy campaigns, and the influence attributed to him in current political organizations and platforms, how do you assess his true role in the post-presidency period? Karoline sat upright, her eyes locked on Obama, her voice low but sharp as a blade. Thank you. Mr. Obama claimed he would focus on philanthropy post-presidency, but I'm here to expose how he continued to manipulate American politics from behind the scenes through nonprofit organizations to undermine the Trump administration. The audience fell silent, some nodding in agreement, others murmuring dissent. Karoline continued, her voice like a powerful stream sweeping the studio. He funded anti-Trump movements, stirring political chaos to maintain his influence. She gestured, and the large screen displayed a chart. Funding from Obama-linked organizations rose 50% from 2017 to 2020. This isn't philanthropy, she declared, her voice like an arrow slicing through the air. This is a strategy to retain power. The host interjected, Karoline, you call this a strategy to retain power. Concern as nonprofits increasingly shape public policy, raising debates about transparency. Mr. Obama, Karoline, accuses you of disrupting politics through funding movements. As a former leader who pledged non-interference, how do you respond? Obama sat upright, his gaze steady, his voice low but persuasive, building on Karoline's strategy point. Thank you for the question. Karoline, accusing me of manipulating from behind the scenes is false. Post-presidency, I focus on philanthropy and education, not political interference. Your chart lacks context, and I reject the notion that I undermine any administration. Obama supporters in the audience applauded, but Karoline didn't flinch. Education, she asked, her voice like a chilling gust directly challenging the non-interference claim. Then explain why your organizations funded millions for anti-Trump movement. She pressed a button, and the screen displayed an internal email. An advisor wrote increased funding to civic groups to maintain political pressure. This is proof you directed from the shadows. Karoline said, her voice like a prosecutor, building on Obama's philanthropy point. You didn't leave politics. You built a network to disrupt. The studio audience fell silent, feeling the weight of the accusation. The host, his voice brimming with excitement, said, Karoline, you claim Mr. Obama built a disruptive network. A sore point as nonprofits increasingly influence politics, raising questions about transparency. Mr. Obama, Karoline presents an internal email accusing you of sustaining political pressure. How do you respond to your post-presidency role? Obama shook his head, his voice firmer, building on Karoline's Disrupt Point. Karoline calling me disruptive is misleading. That email isn't real. The organization's I'm linked to focus on education and civic rights, not politics. I reject any accusation that I manipulated politics from behind the scenes. Karoline smiled, her eyes fixed on Obama civic rights. She asked, her voice like a bolt of light tearing through the studio, challenging the education claim. Then explained why your organization's funded anti-Trump protests, deepening national divisions. She pressed a button, and the screen displayed a report post-presidency funding $50 million to civic movements from 2017 to 2020. This report shows you didn't leave politics, you pulled strings. From behind the scenes, she said, her voice like a hammer striking in a courtroom. Building on Obama's not politics point, you didn't promote unity, you undermined a duly elected administration. The studio remained ablaze with lights. The atmosphere was taut as a bowstring after the heated debate over media, the Iran nuclear deal, healthcare policy, and post-presidency roles. The host, standing center stage with dignified demeanor, spoke in a resonant voice, carrying the weight of guiding a democratic tribunal. Ladies and gentlemen, in an era where transparency is an urgent demand, the public grows increasingly skeptical of what happens behind the political curtain. Karoline, you've made serious accusations about former President Obama's legacy and post-presidency activities. Do you have additional concrete evidence to bolster your arguments? Karoline sat upright, her gaze sweeping the audience like an invisible blade. Her voice rang out low but sharp, as if commanding the studio's atmosphere with every breath. To prove what I've stated, I bring evidence from two independent sources: investigative journalist Daniel Harper and former staffer Sarah Mitchell. People who were inside the system. Mr. Obama wants to keep hidden. The audience held its breath. The space seemed to freeze as Karoline continued, her voice now a powerful current sweeping away all defenses. These documents expose the truth. Mr. Obama doesn't want the public to know. She gestured, and the large screen behind lit up, displaying a document titled Internal Pressure to Conceal Iran Deal Violations, exclusive report by Daniel Harper. Harper uncovered chain of internal emails showing Mr. Obama was informed that Iran violated the terms, and he personally directed that information be kept secret. She said, her voice razor sharp. This isn't quiet diplomacy. This is systematic deception. The host's voice rang out, maintaining objectivity while staying tightly aligned with the debate's flow. Karoline, you call this deception a grave accusation, especially as the public increasingly demands transparency in international agreements. Mr. Obama, Karoline, has presented documents from Daniel Harper accusing you of deliberately concealing Iran's violations. As the signer and advocate of this deal, how do you respond? Obama sat upright, hands firmly on the table, his expression stern. When he spoke, there was no softness, only the cadence of someone who had stood at the center of global politics. Thank you for the question, Karoline. Your documents are not authentic. The Iran deal was overseen by a rigorous international inspection system, independent agencies not controlled by any government. There is no evidence I conceal violations. He leaned slightly forward, his voice resolute. These accusations are not only false, they are an attempt to distort history for short-term political gain. Obama supporters in the audience erupted in applause, but Karoline didn't yield. She tilted her head, her eyes locked on Obama. Distort, she said, her voice ringing like metal, striking back at the rigorous oversight claim. Then why did Sarah Mitchell, a former staffer at your organization, confirm you directed funding to anti-Trump groups? She pressed a button. The screen displayed a memo, $10 million allocated to civic organizations to increase political pressure. Her Barack Obama's directive. This is proof you didn't step away from politics. You were pulling strings from behind the scenes. She said, her voice like a prosecutor, delivering damning evidence. You didn't build democracy. You manipulated it. The studio fell silent. The weight of the accusation palpable. The host stepped forward, his voice precise, reflecting the tension and timeliness of the issue. Karoline, you call this political string pulling, a major accusation, especially as Americans grow wary of the influence of nonprofits on domestic policy. Obama, Karoline, has presented a memo from